Hello, people of the world. This is Jason is Lost, and today I'm in Kobe, a wonderful, beautiful city just to the west of Osaka. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Kevin O'Shea, the host of the Just Japan podcast. I'll admit, I'm a big fan, and I told him that I was going to be around in Kobe, and he was more than happy to tour the city with me and show me what's going on. So let's go and meet him. So here we are in Kobe, and I'm here with Kevin O'Shea of the Just Japan podcast and the website justjapanstuff.com.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's Jason's first time in Kobe, so I'm going to take a little time and show him around the city.
And it's a great opportunity for me to ask you some questions about your life here in Japan and your experiences. So let's go, check it out.
All right, let's go.
So Kevin, the Just Japan podcast, big deal. It's really popular. You've been interviewed by the BBC. It's an amazing source of information for people living in Japan or foreigners. How did this start for you?
Well, I guess it started maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I started listening to podcasts, and I became a big podcast fan, a big podcast consumer. At the time, I was really into marathon running, long distance running, so it was a lot of time with just me being by myself, and I needed something to kind of occupy my mind while I did it. So I started listening to a lot of podcasts. And since I would be going for like 3-hour runs, 4-hour runs, or I'd have long train commutes, I liked long form podcasts. And I guess I thought to myself, I could do something like that. I know a lot of interesting people here in Japan. I've been a YouTuber. I've met a lot of interesting people who could come on the show, and I guess that's how it started.
It's become really popular as well. I'll admit, I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I think I began listening around the beginning. There was a couple, very few actual podcasts actually around focusing just on Japan and different topics all the time. Did you envision it becoming this popular?
No, not at all. I mean, to be honest, I just uploaded episode 151 today, and if you asked me a couple of years ago, would I stick with it this long? I would have said definitely I wouldn't. So I'm surprised that each month it's still growing bigger and bigger, and I'm surprised that I'm still doing it. And I'm still having a lot of fun doing it, which is the best part.
I think the key thing is that it's always a different subject. So Japan is quite a broad topic, but every week you'll have a different topic, whether it's food here in Japan or how to survive as a foreigner, the different activities or different experiences that you experience here. What's been the most fascinating thing for you? Like, oh, I didn't know anything about that. Let's get this guy on to talk about it. Any particular subject that's been really surprising to you?
There's been a lot of really memorable ones over the 3 years or so I've been doing this. Some ones that really stand out in my mind. I guess often, I enjoy doing all of the episodes, but sometimes I will literally finish up an interview and I'll walk out of my Just Japan podcast studio, aka my man cave.
Your man cave. Yeah.
And I'll just be so excited. I'll be like, wow, that was an amazing interview. I learned so much. I've interviewed a lot of really fascinating people over the years. One that just sticks into my mind because it's pretty recent, but I interviewed a guy who is essentially like a typhoon hunter, not a storm chaser, because he actually gets in front of the storms, and he's a videographer based out of Tokyo, and he basically will travel around and get storm footage and footage of typhoons, and he sells it to companies like BBC and CNN, this and that. Yeah. I'm always learning new things, which is a great thing about the podcast. My scope of knowledge is quite limited, what I do. My life is kind of the same thing all the time, so it's great to get all these different people in I'm learning too, but to teach you guys cool stuff about Japan.
So on your podcast, you've always got different and interesting characters and different stories. The great thing about your podcast is that it's always a different topic and stuff that you wouldn't usually find out about, I think. But always relevant to Japan as well. But it kind of shows how, although it's a bit of a niche subject, Japan, within that, you have so many different experiences, so many different topics. If people have an interesting story, should they contact you and let you know that they should be on your pod? If someone wonders, oh, I should be on that podcast, should they get in contact with you?
Oh, absolutely. I spend a lot of time out there on Twitter. Twitter's like my main tool for finding people. I spend a lot of time searching for people that are interesting and then contacting them cold, telling them who I am, what I do, what the Just Japan podcast is, and would they like to come on the show. But sometimes people pitch me, and I always say that, please, if you have an interesting story about Japan or an interesting angle about Japan, please contact me. Find me on Twitter at jlandkev. That's a great place to do it. If you don't use Twitter, Facebook at Just Japan Stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Or you can go to justjapanstuff.com and you can find all the links there to my social media. But please, pitch me. It makes it easier for me, actually, if the guests come to me.
So, Kevin, you recently became a Kobe ambassador?
It's called a Kobe PR ambassador, so public relations ambassador. So it's a volunteer position. There's myself and 18 other foreigners living here in Kobe, and what we're doing is trying to promote the city of Kobe on social media to try to get more people to come here to Kobe. There's a really thriving tourist industry here, but the city of Kobe wanted to get more people from English-speaking countries to visit. So so they put together this scheme called the PR Ambassador Scheme, and essentially what we do, we have these cool passes that get us entry to some places, and we just travel around Kobe. You live your life in Kobe, you go to matsuris and different events, and you just take your pictures and film and you share it on social media with like certain hashtags.
Yeah, as someone who is quite active with social media, you've got YouTube, you've got the podcast, you've got your Instagram, you've got Twitter. You're in a key place there to advertise a city that maybe gets a little bit buried under the popularity of Tokyo, Kyoto,
exactly, Osaka.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, when people think of Japan, they often think of, again, those three places. But a lot of people don't think about Kobe. Or if they do think about Kobe, they think of Kobe beef.
Yes.
So, but there's a lot more in the city than just beef. So it's a lot of fun. So I've been doing that for almost a year now. And sometimes we have get-togethers with all the other PR ambassadors. We work together to do things. But it's been really fun because I've been here my entire time in Japan, and I really love the city.
So how did you end up coming to Japan in the first place?
Good question. Accidentally. So I was, if you guys follow me on YouTube, you'll know that my handle is Busan Kevin. I used to live in Busan, South Korea. And while I was living in Korea, working as a teacher, I met my wife, who is Japanese. She's from Osaka. And
she's Japanese, but you met her in Korea.
That's right. Yeah, she's Japanese, but I met her in Korea. She was living in Busan. She was working at a language school teaching Japanese. So she was teaching Japanese to Korean students, and we met and fell in love. And I ended up in Canada after that. She came to Canada too. And then we ended up here in Kobe because she is from Osaka originally, and I used to work just outside of Kobe, so this was kind of like a halfway point. So now I live here, I work here, and it's awesome.
And how long have you lived here?
I've been here since 2008.
2008.
So almost 9 years now.
So Kobe is unfortunately well known for its earthquake in 1995, I think?
1995, that's right. January 17th, 1995.
So, I mean, you know the date very well. Is it an event, an unfortunate event that still echoes through the city at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a very big part of Kobe's identity. It was a huge tragedy. A lot of parts of the city were leveled actually at the time, and I think it was more than 6,000 people lost their lives. So every year there's numerous memorials. In fact, we're in a memorial park right now. And throughout the city, there's a lot of memorials to the Kobe earthquake. So it is definitely a very big part of the city's identity even today.
So regarding Japan, you've got a lot of social media these days, articles, YouTube, social media, but it's still considered a really perplexing country. People have a lot of questions about the different culture, the different food, societal norms. Despite living here for 8 or 9 years, do you still have trouble with the country? Do you still get frustrated by the differences? What's it like living here and being a foreigner in Japan?
I think I'm used to a lot of things. I don't question a lot of things. I think one thing I've learned over the years is not to question why. It's a different place and things are done in different ways. But one thing that still does frustrate me often is the amount of bureaucracy. Even on a small level, meetings after meetings after meetings, pre-meetings before the meeting, pre-meetings and post-meetings and meetings, meetings about things that you don't need meetings for. So I think that kind of system of bureaucracy and having lots of meetings, that can sometimes be frustrating for me, definitely.
So Kevin, before you started this podcast, you actually have a YouTube channel that you've got loads of videos on. How did that come about?
Well, I started doing my YouTube channel, Busan Kevin, when I lived in Busan, Korea. And it was initially it was just to show my parents back home of what life was like. A few years later, I made it to Japan, And there was a small, really friendly, warm community of video bloggers here in Japan, and that was before the term J-vlogger.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
there was this great, tight-knit group of people making videos and supporting each other.
Just a few people, it's quite a new thing.
It was pretty small, so because of that, there wasn't a lot of YouTube content out there about Japan, so a lot of people came to me, and I got a very big following, at the time.
Oh, super.
Yeah, so, within a few years of doing it, I had more than 20,000 subscribers, which at the time was huge.
Sure, yes, yeah.
And, so it was a lot of fun. Again, there wasn't a lot of content out there at the time, so I was one of the few content creators.
Whereas now, I think there's a lot of YouTubers in Japan. People have a lot of access to social media and cameras, so there is a lot more people able to kind of showcase the country, showcase the differences, the interesting country and culture.
And I think at the time, even just a few years ago, before I started my podcast, there were a lot of people creating content for YouTube, but there weren't many people creating podcasts. And that was this new form of media that I was loving so much.
So that transition
Absolutely.
to podcasting, was that natural? Did you?
It was. I wanted a new challenge.
Yes,
and again, I
a new
realized
challenge,
there was a hole there. There was like a dearth of good podcasts about Japan. There just weren't many people doing it. So I figured I had enough of a following on YouTube that if I started a podcast, a lot of those people would transition over and start following my from YouTube to my podcast. So it just seemed like a natural fit. And so 151 episodes later, I'm still going.
So being active on social media comes with its own problems. Have you had any interesting experiences with people viewing your videos or listening to your podcast or anything like that?
I've never had an issue with a podcast, but on a previous episode of the podcast a couple of months ago, I did talk about how I had one incident with YouTube where basically it was just, I guess I filmed in the wrong place at the wrong time, and someone took great issue with the video I made to the point where they contacted my employer and tried to have me terminated from my position, which didn't happen, of course. But
what was you taking video of? Like
I was doing a GoPro video, so I had a GoPro attached to my bicycle, and I was just cycling down a road, kind of narrating the scene, and it was just on a quiet morning. But this person lived in the area, and they were upset that I was filming in the area that they lived. So they wanted me to take down the video, and they took a pretty strong approach to doing that.
You said they were contacting your work?
They contacted my work on several occasions, actually. So yeah, that was a pretty stressful time.
It's not really what you expect.
No, not at all. Not at all. The person was obviously quite upset. Luckily, my employer is quite supportive of me, so it went away. But so again, sometimes when you're out there on social media, things can come from strange directions that you never expect or plan for.
But still, usually, most of the time, you actually got quite a good response on Twitter, on
absolutely,
YouTube.
Absolutely. I mean, I think once upon a time in the early days of YouTube, when there were very few of us, I think we got trolled a lot because there weren't many of us. But now there's such a proliferation of content creators making things about Japan that I guess there's people who are more salacious that they can go after the trolls. So people tend to leave me alone these days. I haven't had any negative encounters in quite a long time.
And in fact, quite positive. I think we've been walking around today, and you've had a couple of people shout your name at you.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bit busy here.
Yeah. It's actually going to get busier. A loud road up here.
Yeah. We've had people yelling at you.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Shea, kids that you've taught previously. I'm getting the feeling that Kobe is quite a friendly city.
Yeah, Kobe is definitely a very friendly city. I've been I called this place home for 9 years. I love it. It does have kind of a small town feel for a city of 1.5 million people.
And compared to Tokyo, Osaka, everything here is, rather than being on different stations all over the city, everything's very centralized.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Everything's within pretty much a short walking distance. If you're a walker, it's definitely a great city for you.
Oh, cool.
So the downtown core of Kobe, I mean, you can just, from the train station to the ocean, it's about 15 minutes to the harbor front. A lot of things to see, a lot of memorials, museums, shrines, just within walking distance. It's really awesome.
And you run a lot as well, is it?
In the past I did, not so much these days. Had a knee injury last year, and then I've been basically stricken with a case of the lazies.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, I've run a lot. I've run through almost seems like every nook and cranny of the city over the years that I lived here. So I definitely learned a lot about the city that way.
You run the Kobe marathons as well?
Yeah, I've
right?
run the Kobe Marathon, Osaka Marathon, the Tokyo Marathon.
Oh, wow,
Run a whole
wow,
bunch
wow.
of them. Yeah, I guess like as part of being a PR ambassador, one thing I did last year was a lot of work promoting the Kobe Marathon.
Oh, super.
Yeah.
So we're here in Kobe's Chinatown, in the center of the city, and they've got lots of stalls selling Kobe beef, so I thought I'd try it for the first time. Kevin is nice enough to treat me to some Kobe beef. And have you had this before?
A long time ago.
Long time ago. Okay, so for some reason, all of the stalls here, they've got Spider-Man outside.
No idea why. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay, Kobe beef for the first time. Okay, it's all right. It's actually pretty good. There's little stalls here where you don't have to pay the £100 upwards price tag for Kobe beef. So yeah, definitely give it a go. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying it.
So you're pretty much a master of social media at the moment. You've got your amazing podcast. You've also got your YouTube channel as well. You're really active on Twitter. Do follow him on Twitter. But you've also got your website,
Yes.
JustJapanStuff.com, right?
That's right, JustJapanStuff.com now. The site began basically as kind of a landing pad for the podcast,
Yes,
a place
yeah,
to
yeah,
go
podcast,
for
yeah.
the show notes and find links. But recently, I'm trying to change it and turn it into something more. I want it to be a site where people can go and find out a lot of stuff about Japan. So I've been writing a lot of content for it, a lot of written articles, and I've been having guest bloggers come on and write content for it too. And for you guys that are watching the video right now, if you go to JustJapanStuff.com, you can check out a post that Jason wrote about hiking a mountain in Japan.
Yes. Last time I was here in Japan, traveling around in the south of the country, there's an area called Kagoshima, and there's a nearby mountain that I climbed. And so yeah, I wrote a little story, and you can check that out on JustJapanStuff.com. So we're now here in Kobe's harbor.
That's right. So we are standing right now in American Park, which is a very kind of iconic place here in Kobe, Japan. Behind us we have Kobe Port Tower and the Maritime Museum, a lot of great shopping areas and a mall back there too. And this is called American Park because located just over there, just up the road, was the first American consulate in Kobe back in the 1860s. And actually, this way over here, we actually have an earthquake memorial. We talked about the earthquake earlier on, and they've actually part of this park that was destroyed in the 95 earthquake has been preserved, and right now there's a very nice memorial, to help people remember what happened.
They've actually maintained it, preserved
Absolutely.
the damaged area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And this is the 150th birthday of the city of Kobe this year, so they're actually doing some work right now to even make it look nicer and renovate the whole park.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, we've been walking around Kobe. It's really beautiful. It seems like an ideal day trip if you're in Japan. Do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're in the Kansai area, if you're in Kyoto, you're in Osaka, definitely take the time to come here for a day. It's really convenient. You can walk around the whole downtown area. You can check out the mountains. You can check out shrines, shopping areas, a lot of great cafes and things, the harbor area, all within walking distance. So it's definitely a place you can come here in the morning, see a whole lot, and then you can move off to somewhere else in the evening or late afternoon.
So Kevin, I've very much enjoyed walking around Kobe today. Thank you very much for being my tour guide. The Just Japan podcast is awesome. You should definitely take a listen. JustJapanStuff.com.
That's right, that's a place. Go and check it out. All the links to my social media are there. You can find me on Twitter at JLandKev. Facebook page is at Just Japan Stuff.
And you've got lots of interesting YouTube videos as well. So what's your YouTube?
Okay, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/BusanKevin.
So do definitely check it out. Me and Kevin are now going to go into Kobe and grab a beer. And it's definitely a very lovely city, so do definitely check it out if you have the opportunity.
Absolutely.
We'll leave you there, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
See you later.